I started playing the violin when I was 3, but the whole story starts much earlier when my mother, who grew up in Korea, came to this country. She and my father, I don't think they were exactly planning on when to have me, but when my mother became pregnant with me and I was still in her tummy, she decided, A, I want to have a son, and B, I'm going to train that son to become a world-famous concert violinist. So my destiny was set even before I came into the world. And when I turned 3, Santa Claus brought me a 1/8 size violin. This is what you call a full-size violin, but an 1/8 size is only about this big, and the bow is only about this long. And so my mother was on a mission, and like an Olympic athlete, she trained me every day from the time I was 3, and I was never allowed to miss a day. I practiced a little bit more today than I did yesterday. By the time I was 7, I was practicing 5 hours every single day. Breakfast table, I had my cereal spoon conducting, reading scores. I'd come home from school. I never had to do homework, never had to do chores around the house. I would come home and my mother would train my ear. She would sit at the piano and play a huge chord, say, close your eyes, don't look. And she would make me identify all those notes. She was training my ear to have perfect pitch, which is the ability to understand what notes are without seeing them. You just train your ear. When I turned 10, I started traveling from where I grew up, South Carolina, to New York. And every other Saturday morning, my parents would put me on an airplane by myself, and I would fly by myself to New York City and get a taxi and go into Manhattan to the middle of New York City to the Juilliard School of Music, one of the great conservatories of the world. And I would take lessons with the most famous violin teacher in the world, Dorothy DeLay. And at night, I would look at my watch. Oh, I got to go. And I would go back out onto Broadway in the dark and hail a cab, go back out to LaGuardia Airport and fly back to South Carolina. And I did that for many years. I knew everybody that worked in the airports. I knew all the flight attendants. And it was an amazing way to grow up. I must say that it was a bit of an unhappy childhood. I wasn't enjoying it and loving it all the time. I mean, what kid 10 years old wants to practice violin 5 hours every day? I started when I was 3, as I said. And until I was 12 years old, 9 years, I never missed practicing 5 hours for one day. And finally, when I was 12, I had oral surgery. I had to have a tooth removed, and my jaw became this big. And my mother finally said, okay, you can miss one day after 9 years. So my mother was a bit of a monster. But without all of that incredibly intense training, there is no way that I would be doing what I am now and traveling the world and enjoying the greatest music and the most wonderful conductors and soloists and having all the great opportunities I do now. Unfortunately, my mother passed away when I was 14. And so I know she's watching from above, but on this earth, she never got to see all the things that she dreamt of for her son, but I know she's watching. My whole life, everybody had always said to me, oh, David, can I have your autograph? Because someday you will be famous. But the years went by and my mother passed away and I became kind of lost and I lost my taste for playing the violin. But finally it was time to go to college. I was 17 and I had never cracked a book. I had never studied and I just thought, what else am I going to do? So I decided, okay, I'm going to go to Juilliard. So I went to Juilliard where all my friends were. I went back to my teacher, Dorothy DeLay, and she said, honey, let's make a plan. So we planned for the Olympics of Music, the Tchaikovsky competition in Moscow, which was coming up in 1986. So I had 6 years to prepare. So for 6 years we prepared, and the goal was to get to the finals and win one of the 8 prizes. And thankfully, when I went in 86, I made it to the finals and I won one of the prizes, the 6th prize. But I thought, okay, now it's going to happen. What everybody had told me was automatic. You're going to be famous. But that didn't happen. I got kind of close, some wonderful concerts. I traveled the world, but not really. I wasn't really at the top level. I met my wife in the meantime. She was training her whole life to be a professional golfer. And so the two of us are trying so hard to get to the top levels of our professions. She eventually burned out and quit playing golf. So fast forward, I'm 33 years old, and I go to see this movie called Jerry Maguire. Tom Cruise is in it, and it's about a sports agent. And he basically thinks he's going to make it to the top level, and he doesn't quite make it, and then he goes all the way down to the bottom. He's depressed. And then in true Hollywood fashion, redemption, and at the end he comes back and he makes it. And it's just a great success story, a lot of stick-to-itiveness. And for some reason, that movie really resonated in my heart. And after seeing the movie, I came downstairs at 3 a.m, and I sat on the living room floor. And my wife, who had been kind of nudging me for a couple of years, hey, you know, maybe the solo thing isn't for you. Maybe you should try becoming a concertmaster, the first chair violinist of a big orchestra. And I would always say, oh, no way, Janie. I'm not going to have some conductor tell me how to play every day. But that night, I sat on the floor in the dark, and I thought, you know what? You are not going to make it as a big famous soloist. It's not going to happen. And the next morning, I told her, Janie, I have an announcement to make. I'm going to go try to become concertmaster of an orchestra. And that was the beginning of a new journey, which led me to become concertmaster of the Philadelphia Orchestra, which is one of the great orchestras in the world for the last 100 years. And a concertmaster is basically the quarterback of the team. The head coach is the same thing as the conductor. They really control everything that's going on. But my job as concertmaster is to kind of read the mind of the conductor, what their wishes are musically, and try to transmit that to my colleagues through facial expressions, body motions, maybe the tilt of my head, maybe the way I move the bow. And then perhaps if the conductor is unsure of, maybe wants to say something to the orchestra members, but is not quite sure how it would go over, he might come to me and quietly say, do you think it would be okay if I said to the first clarinet, he's playing a little loud at something, do you think he would take that okay? And I might say, Maestro, you don't want to do that. He wouldn't take that well. Or somebody from the orchestra from the very back might say, I can't hear him. He whispers all the time. Can you tell him to speak a little louder in rehearsal? And I'll say, of course. And then I'll go to the maestro. Maestro, do you think you could just, I think there's some people that can't quite hear you over the air conditioning. So there's a lot of diplomatic stuff going on as concertmaster. And I love that. I feel that as a musician, you don't necessarily have to be the absolute best at playing the instrument. You just have to be good enough. What I think you have to have is the ability to deal and talk to people in a gracious, warm, sincere, honest way. Actually, it's not just music. It's just about anything in life. You don't have to be the most brilliant scientist, the most brilliant doctor, the technically best engineer or architect. You just have to be good enough. Of course, that's a very high level, and it's a lifetime of training. But the other stuff on top of that, being able to really be a good person that people want to be around, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's what does it. And that's, I think, where I'm a perfect example. I am certainly not the best violin player out there, even probably in the city of Philadelphia. But I enjoy people, I enjoy friends, I enjoy communicating with people. And for me, the best part of performing for me is not even the music, it is performing for people. And I just get a sense of how people are feeling in the audience, whether they're 10 feet away from me or they're 500 yards away from me in the top balcony. I just get a sense of that give and take, and I love that part of performing. I would die if I couldn't perform. Having a momentary solo passage in a symphony is, well, let me put it to you this way. I read an article in the paper recently where they put heart monitors on firemen. And apparently, the time when there is no fire, when they're sitting around playing checkers at the firehouse, eating chili, their heart rate is very low. They're very healthy and strong people. But when they enter the burning house, their heart rate goes dangerously high. Boom, 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 and it stays up there until they leave the danger. That's me. I feel that when I see it coming up, I usually circle the place that says solo, my solo, in red pencil. So we turn the page in the middle of the piece and I can see it coming up. I can just feel my heart rate start to go faster and faster. And I basically say 3 words to myself: go for it. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it. And then at that moment when I start playing, I'm screaming it out in my head: go for it.